Vivid verses.
The first time Margot mentioned the article, we were eating leftover risotto on the back patio, and I should have paid closer attention to the angle of her shoulders. She was scrolling through her phone with that particular focus she reserved for things she'd already decided to take seriously. The lemon balm in the planter behind her had grown leggy, reaching toward the late sun. I'd been meaning to prune it. I made a mental note and then returned my attention to her face. "There's this piece I keep coming back to," she said, "about how women lose themselves in long-term partnerships. The way our needs get absorbed into the relationship until we can't remember what we wanted in the first place." I waited. She didn't elaborate. She just kept scrolling, occasionally taking a small bite of risotto, and the moment passed into something else, a comment about her sister's new dog, a question about whether we needed to call someone about the dishwasher making that sound again. I filed the article away, not as a threat, just as information. She's been reading something. She's processing something. When it matters, she'll tell me. That was on a Thursday. By the following Wednesday, she had told me 3 more times, each iteration slightly more developed, like a writer working out a thesis in conversation. By Saturday morning, she sat across from me at the breakfast table, both hands wrapped around her coffee, and said, "I want to talk about our living arrangement." I set down the section of newspaper I'd been pretending to read for the last 10 minutes. "Here we go. Okay. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I need to feel like myself again. And I think one of the things that's been getting in the way is that I don't have space that's truly mine. I share everything with you. My bed, my room, my closet, she paused, searching. My circadian rhythm. I sleep when you sleep. I wake when you wake. And I don't think I realized how much that was costing me until recently. I watched her hands. Her thumb was working the rim of the mug in small, anxious revolutions. She rehearsed this. She's not sure how I'll take it. "What are you proposing?" "Separate bedrooms. I take the office. We could move the desk to the guest room, or, I don't know, we'd figure it out. But I need a room that's mine, where I can read late if I want to, or wake up at 5 and do yoga without worrying about waking you. Or just," she gestured vaguely, "exist, without the weight of another person's presence." I let the silence hold for a moment. Not too long, just long enough to indicate I was taking it seriously. "Can I ask 2 questions?" "Of course. First, is this something you've been feeling for a while? Or is this more recent?" She seemed relieved by the question. She expected resistance. She prepared for resistance. "Honestly, I think I've been feeling it for years, and I just didn't have a language for it. I thought it was a personality flaw. I thought I was just bad at being in a relationship. And then I read this piece, I'll send it to you, about how heteronormative coupling defaults assume women's needs are negotiable, and something just clicked. I don't think I'm broken. I think the structure is. The structure is." I nodded slowly. "Okay. And second question, is this about something specific I'm doing, or is this about the configuration itself?" "The configuration itself. You're not doing anything wrong. You've been." Her face softened. "You've been wonderful, actually. This isn't about you. This is about me." There it was. The phrase that excuses everything. "This is about me." I noted it without comment. Got it. Got it. You want separate bedrooms. You're framing it as essential to your identity and independence. You're not asking permission. You're telling me what you need. I tilted my head slightly. "Right." She blinked. I mean, I'm not telling you It's fine. I'm not criticizing. I'm just making sure I understand. I want it to be a conversation. This is the conversation." I gave her a small, even smile. "And I'm telling you that I hear you. I understand what you're asking for, and I'm happy to make it happen. I'll move my things into the guest room this weekend. We can rearrange the office for you next week if you want to take your time." She stared at me. The thumb stopped revolving. "Just like that. Just like that. You don't want to think about it?" I just did. For 30 seconds. You said it's essential to your identity. That's not really a thing I'm going to negotiate against. If you need it, you need it. I picked up the newspaper again, then set it down. I do have one question, but it's logistical. What? Do you want me in the guest room, or do you want to be in the guest room? I don't have a preference. The office has the better light, but the guest room has the en-suite. I'm fine either way. She opened her mouth and closed it. She's recalibrating. She came in armored for a fight, and the fight didn't happen. The office. I like the office. If you don't mind. I don't mind. I'll start moving things tonight. You really don't mind? This was the moment. I could feel her watching me, looking for the catch, for the passive-aggressive undertone, for the flicker of wounded pride she could pivot against and use to reset the conversation. I gave her none of it. I really don't mind. You thought about this. You explained it clearly. I respect what you're saying. And I'm not going to be the kind of partner who treats your stated needs like negotiating positions. If you say you need this, you need this. She nodded slowly. There was something in her face I couldn't quite read. Relief, maybe, or its shadow. Thank you, she said. You're welcome. I picked up my plate and her plate and carried them inside. As I rinsed them in the sink, I let myself feel exactly one beat of something. Not anger, not hurt, just a clean, cold recognition of what had just happened. Then I let it go. She told you what she wanted. You're going to give it to her. The rest is just execution. By Sunday evening, my things were in the guest room. I'd done it methodically. Clothes hung in the smaller closet, books arranged on the nightstand, the charger plugged in beside the bed. I'd made the bed with the navy linens because I preferred them and because the navy didn't match anything Margot had ever chosen for the master bedroom, which had always been her aesthetic project more than mine. I didn't make a show of it. I didn't slam doors. I didn't sulk. I came down for dinner that evening with the same demeanor I did Saturday morning. And when she asked, somewhat tentatively, how the move had gone, I said it had gone fine and that I'd appreciated having a project for the afternoon. You really seem okay with this, she said. I am okay with this. I thought you'd have more feelings about it. I consider this for a moment. She wants feelings. She wants to know she's been heard at an emotional register, not just a logistical one. But if I give her feelings now, the feelings become a problem. They become something she has to manage. So I'll give her something true but small. I have feelings about it, I said, but they're my feelings to manage, not yours. You asked for something you need. The healthiest thing I can do is give it to you without making you feel guilty about asking. She studied me. That's a very mature way to look at it. I try. After dinner, I went to my room and read for 2 hours, then turned out the light at 10:30. I heard her come up the stairs around 11. She paused outside my door for a few seconds. I tracked the silence carefully, and then continued down the hall to the master bedroom. I lay in the dark with my eyes open for a while. The thing she doesn't understand yet, I thought, is that intimacy is not a default state. It's a constant act of choice. You don't get to label the default state oppression and then expect the choice to keep happening on its own. The choice was never separable from the structure. The choice was the structure. I turned over and went to sleep. For the first week, she seemed pleased with herself. She came home from work with an energy I hadn't seen in months. Not quite happiness, but something like vindication. She'd done the brave thing. She'd advocated for herself. She'd been heard. The relationship was evolving, and she was the architect. She bought herself a new duvet for the office bed. She moved her books from our shared shelf into a small bookcase she'd had me carry up from the basement. She started doing yoga in the morning, just as she'd predicted, and she made a point of telling me about it at breakfast, watching for my reaction. That's great, I said. I'm glad it's working for you. It really is. I feel so much more grounded. Good. I made breakfast the same way I'd always made breakfast. I asked about her day the same way I'd always asked about her day. I was, by any objective measure, exactly the same partner I had been the week before. I just didn't touch her anymore. Not in any ostentatious way. I didn't recoil. I didn't avoid her hand if she reached for me. I simply stopped initiating. I didn't kiss her in the kitchen. I didn't slide my arm around her waist while she stirred something on the stove. I didn't catch her hip as I passed her in the hallway. The small, constant currency of physical contact that had run between us for years, I stopped spending it. The room was the room, I thought, but the room was also a metaphor, and she was the one who chose it. I'm just respecting the metaphor. The first time she noticed, it was a Wednesday. She came up behind me at the sink, slid her arms around my waist, and pressed her face between my shoulder blades. I let her stay there for the appropriate amount of time. Then I turned, gave her a small smile, and went back to drying the pan. She watched me. "You okay?" "I'm great." "How was your day?" "Fine." "You just seem a little far away." "Just tired." "Long day." She nodded slowly. She wasn't satisfied with the answer, but she couldn't articulate why. Good. Let her sit with it. That night, she came to my door around 10:30. I was reading. She knocked. An actual knock on the door of what had until very recently been our shared space. And I called for her to come in. "Hi," she said. "Hi. I just wanted to say good night." "Good night." She lingered in the doorway. She wants me to invite her in. She wants me to ask her to stay. If I do, the whole architecture she just built collapses, and she can pretend it never existed. She gets to have the bedroom and the boundary and the man who can't bear to be without her. She gets to be brave and adored simultaneously. That's the move. I didn't make it. "Sleep well," I said. She paused, then nodded, then closed the door quietly behind her. I listened to her footsteps recede down the hall. I picked up my book again. The lamp made a small, warm circle on the page. I read for another 40 minutes, then turned out the light and slept dreamlessly until morning. By the third week, the warmth was gone. Not in any single dramatic moment, but in the accumulating absence of all the small things that had constituted the warmth. We were polite. We were considerate. We coordinated grocery lists and arrived at each other's family events with appropriate gifts. We made the kind of pleasant, unobjectionable conversation that two adult roommates might make. She started watching me more. I caught her at it. Over coffee, across the dinner table, in the reflection of the bathroom mirror as she brushed her teeth in the master bathroom, and I crossed the hall to use the guest bathroom. She was looking for something. The crack in the composure. The clue that would tell her how to read what was happening. I gave her nothing to read because there was nothing to read. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't sulking. I wasn't playing chicken with her affection. I was simply, completely doing what she'd asked. Separate rooms means separate rooms, I thought, watching her watching me. You don't get to keep the closeness as a free amenity attached to the boundary. Closeness was never an amenity. Closeness was the whole house, and you said you wanted to live in only one of its rooms. The fourth week, she started leaving her door open at night. I noticed because I had to pass it on my way to the bathroom. The first night, I assumed it was an accident. The second night, I understood the invitation. The third night, I closed it gently on my way back to my own room. The fourth night, I heard her crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the soft, uneven breathing of someone who has lost track of how a thing started and is trying to retrace the steps. I stood in the hall outside her door for perhaps 15 seconds. This is the moment, I thought, where I'm supposed to soften, where I'm supposed to walk in and gather her up and tell her it was always going to be okay and we can figure this out. And if I do that, I will spend the rest of this relationship as a person whose principles dissolve on contact with her tears. I will have taught her that her tears are a currency that buys back any boundary I draw. And I will not be a partner she respects, because she will know she purchased her way through my limits, and she will despise me for the smallness of the price. I went back to my room. I closed the door. I went to sleep. The confrontation came on a Sunday morning, 5th week in. We were at the breakfast table again, our great forum, the place where the worst conversations always happened. She had not slept well. I could see it in her face, in the slight puffiness around her eyes. She'd put on lipstick anyway, which I noted as a signal. She's coming in armed. She's coming in ready. I poured her coffee. She didn't pick it up. I want to talk about what's happening between us, she said. Okay. Things have gotten very cold. Have they? She looked at me sharply. You know they have. I held her gaze. I will not pretend not to know what she means. That would be cruelty, but I will not be the one to name it for her. She needs to name it herself. Tell me what you're noticing, I said. You don't touch me anymore. You don't kiss me when you leave for work. We don't have sex. We haven't had sex in over a month. You've stopped flirting with me. You've stopped looking at me. You've stopped, she paused. Her voice was steady but tight. You've stopped wanting me. I considered this carefully. Is this true? Is this what's happened? I haven't stopped wanting you, I said. I've stopped acting on wanting you in the ways I used to. Why? Because you asked me to. She froze. I never asked you to. You asked for separate bedrooms. You framed it as essential to your identity and independence. You said you needed a room that was yours, that wasn't burdened by the weight of another person's presence. I kept my voice even. Not cold, not cruel, just clear. I respected what you said. I'm continuing to respect what you said. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? She stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed. I meant I wanted my own space to sleep. I meant I wanted to not have to coordinate my schedule with yours every single night. I didn't mean, she faltered. I didn't mean you should stop being affectionate with me. I leaned back in my chair. Not aggressively, just settling in. This is the part where I have to be very careful. Not because she's fragile, but because what I say next has to be true, and it has to be unanswerable. Margot, I said gently, let me reflect back to you what you actually said. You told me that sharing a bedroom with me was, quote, the weight of another person's presence. You told me that you slept when I slept and woke when I woke, and that this was costing you the ability to feel like yourself. You told me the structure of heteronormative coupling assumed your needs were negotiable. You sent me an article about how women lose themselves in long-term partnerships, and you used that article to frame the conversation. Wait, let me finish. When you said all of that, the only respectful response on my part was to take you at your word. Because if I'd said, yes, I'll move into the guest room, but I'm going to keep kissing you in the kitchen and pulling you into bed on Saturday mornings, that would have meant I didn't actually believe you. It would have meant I thought you were being dramatic, or that you didn't really understand your own needs, or that you'd come around once you got what you wanted. And I respect you too much to think any of those things. So I took you seriously. I gave you exactly what you asked for. And I assumed that you, being an adult who had clearly thought about this, understood that the closeness we had wasn't separable from the closeness we had. It was the same thing. It was one continuous structure. And you told me that structure was costing you yourself. So I dismantled it, carefully, without resentment, without theatrics, because that's what you said you needed. She was very still. And now, I continued, you're telling me that's not what you meant, that you wanted to keep all the warmth and only lose the inconvenience, that you wanted to relabel half the relationship as oppression and keep the other half as a free amenity. And I understand the appeal of that. I really do. But I'm not going to be the partner who reads your initial request as a kind of emotional bluff that I was supposed to call. I'm not going to be the partner who teaches you that the words you use to describe your needs were just a negotiating position. Because if I do that, then the next time you tell me what you need, neither of us will know what you actually mean. And I don't want to live like that. A long silence. You're being cruel, she said quietly. I don't think I am. I think I'm being honest. Cruel would have been pretending nothing had changed and letting you spend the next year wondering why our marriage fell hollow. She winced at the word marriage. We'd been together long enough that the word fit, even if we'd never been formal about it. "What are you saying?" she asked. "I'm saying you got exactly what you asked for. And I'm saying I'm not the kind of man who plays games with moving goalposts. If you tell me you need separate rooms because togetherness is oppressive, I'm going to take that seriously. If you tell me you've changed your mind, I'm going to take that seriously too. But I'm not going to pretend that what you asked for wasn't what you asked for. And I'm not going to pretend I don't know the difference." She looked down at her coffee. It was no longer steaming. "I think I made a mistake," she said. "I let that sit between us for a long moment. Now we're at the real conversation. Now she's saying something true. The question is what I do with it." "Maybe you did," I said. "Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you needed to test whether the thing you had was a thing you wanted. People do that. It's not a moral failing. But I think you have to be very honest with yourself now, because if you walk this back without understanding it, we'll be right here again in 2 years, and I won't be as patient the second time." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I'm not going to move back into the master bedroom on a Tuesday because you had a bad night. If we're going to undo this, we're going to undo it because you've actually understood what you were doing when you did it. Not because you've gotten lonely and you want the warmth back without the work. The work is figuring out what the closeness was for. And you'd have to do that work whether I was here or not." She was crying now, but quietly. Not the kind of crying that demanded a response. The kind that happens when a person realizes something about herself, and the realization is sharper than she expected. I slid the tissue box across the table. I'm not going to comfort her with my body. I'm not going to give her the ritual reassurance she's used to. The most respectful thing I can do is let her sit with this. "I don't know what to say," she said. "You don't have to say anything right now. You can think about it. Take a week. Take a month. I'm not going anywhere. But I'm also not going to perform a reconciliation we haven't earned. I love you. I'm not angry. But I'm not going to be a man who can be talked into ignoring what was actually said." She nodded slowly. She took a tissue. She wiped her face. She drank some of her coffee, which had gone cold. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "Did you know? When I asked for the room, did you know what would happen?" I considered the question carefully. The honest answer is yes. The honest answer is that I knew the moment she finished her sentence. The honest answer is that I had to choose in that 30-second pause, whether to fight for the closeness or whether to respect the boundary. And I chose the boundary because fighting for closeness against a partner who has framed it as oppression is the most thankless and corrosive thing a person can do. "I had an idea," I said, "and you didn't warn me?" Warning you would have been the same as overriding you. If I'd said, "Be careful, you might be giving up something you don't realize you want," I'd have been telling you that I knew your needs better than you did. And that's exactly the dynamic you were trying to escape. The only way to actually respect what you said was to take you at your word and let you find out for yourself. That's a hell of a thing to do to someone. It's exactly what you asked me to do. She laughed, a small, wrecked, surprised laugh, almost despite herself. "You're a hard man sometimes." "I'm not actually. I just don't perform softness when softness has been redefined as a problem." We sat there for a long time. The light from the kitchen window had shifted. The risotto pan from last night was still drying on the rack, and somewhere outside a neighbor's dog was barking at the postal worker, the same dog at the same hour as every other day, and the predictability of it felt obscene against the actual conversation we were having. "I don't want to live like this," she said finally. "Then we should talk about what you do want, but not as a reaction to feeling lonely on a Saturday night. As an actual considered position, the same way you came to me 5 weeks ago, with clarity, with language, with an understanding of what you were asking for and why. That's fair. I'm not trying to be punishing. I'm trying to make sure that the next thing you ask me for is something you actually want, because I will give it to you. That's the part you have to understand. I will give you what you ask me for. So please, Be careful what you ask." She nodded. She looked at me for a long moment, and I let her look. "I'll think about it," she said. "Take your time." She got up. She rinsed her cup. She put in the dishwasher. She paused at the door of the kitchen and looked back at me. "Thank you for not yelling at me," she said. "I would never yell at you." "I know. That's part of what I'm thanking you for." She went upstairs. I heard the door of her room, the office, the room she had chosen, close gently. I sat at the table for another 20 minutes, drinking my coffee and listening to the dog and the dishwasher and the small sound of the house I had lived in with her for what now felt like a long time, and also no time at all. She'll come back to me, I thought. Or she won't. But if she comes back, it will be because she chose to, not because I beg her to. And if she doesn't, I will have lost something real. But I will not have lost myself. I got up. I rinsed my own cup. I went out to the back patio, took the pruning shears from the small ceramic pot where I kept them, and trimmed the lemon balm. It needed it. The leggy stalks had been bothering me for weeks, and there was no reason now to put it off. She came down for dinner. We ate. We talked about her sister's dog again, which had apparently developed an obsession with the male slot. She laughed at her own description of it, and the laugh was real. I made a small joke in return, and she laughed at that too. Afterward, she did the dishes. I read on the couch. At 9:30, she came and sat at the other end of the couch, not touching me, not asking permission, just present. "What are you reading?" she said. I told her. "Is it good?" "It's good enough that I want to finish it. Not so good that I'd recommend it." That's a useful distinction. I find it is. She didn't try to close the distance between us on the couch. She didn't reach for my hand. She read something on her phone for a while. Then she got up. "I'm going to head up," she said. "Okay." She paused. Here it comes, I thought. Good night. Good night. She went upstairs. I listened to her footsteps. I listened to the door of the office close. I read 3 more chapters, then went up to my own room and turned out the light. In the morning, she was in the kitchen before me. She made coffee. She cut up some fruit. She slid a plate across the counter to me without saying anything, and I took it and sat down. "I've been thinking," she said. "Yeah, I think I'd like to ask for something, but I want to ask for it differently than I asked for the last thing." I set down my fork. "Good. She's doing the work. Okay. I'd like to talk to you about moving back into the same room, but I don't want to just walk it back. I want to understand what I was actually asking for the first time and what I'm actually asking for now. Can we do that?" "Yes, but I have a condition." She tensed slightly. "What?" "Not today. Take a week. Sit with it. If you still want to have the conversation next Sunday, we'll have it. And we'll have it well. But I don't want to make a decision like this on the back of one bad night." "That seems fair." "It is fair." She nodded. She drank her coffee. We didn't talk about it again that week. The Sunday she'd been told to wait for, she came down at the regular hour and sat at the breakfast table with a small notebook. I noticed the notebook and did not comment on it. "I made some notes," she said. "Is that strange?" "Not at all. I appreciate it, actually." She opened the notebook. Her handwriting was small and neat. She'd always written in that small, neat way, even when we'd left each other notes on the counter years ago, and seeing it now was a kind of low ache I let pass without acknowledgement. "I think what I was actually asking for when I asked for the separate room," she began, "was a way to feel like I had ownership over my own time and my own body. I felt like I'd defaulted into us, and I didn't know if I'd chosen us or just slid into us. And that scared me. And I think I confused the feeling of needing to choose with the feeling of needing to leave. Not leave the relationship, but leave the configuration. Like I thought if I could break the configuration, I could re-choose it." I nodded. "That's actually quite good. She's done the work. But what I learned," she went on, "is that the configuration wasn't what I thought it was. The configuration was it was the soil, and the closeness was what grew in it. And when I changed the soil, the thing I'd loved died. It didn't even take very long." She looked up from her notebook. Her eyes were dry, but her face was very serious. I don't think I knew that closeness was something that had to be tended. I thought it was a fact about us. I thought it was a property of the relationship like the address. And it isn't. It's a thing you do. Every day. And when I stopped doing it, you stopped doing it, and very quickly there was nothing there. You think I stopped doing it because you stopped, didn't you? I considered this carefully. Partly. But also, when you asked for the room, you weren't just asking for the room. You were telling me what you felt about being close to me. You were calling it a wait. So when I moved into the guest room, I wasn't just changing where I slept. I was changing how I was allowed to think about being close to you. I couldn't keep flirting with you in the kitchen if the kitchen flirtation was part of what felt oppressive. I had to assume the whole thing was on the table. I see that now. I want to be very clear about something, I said. I didn't withdraw to punish you. I withdrew because the alternative would have been to ignore what you said. I believe you. Good. She closed the notebook. She put her hands flat on the table. I want to move back into the same room with you. Not because I'm lonely. Not because I miss the warmth. Or, not only because I miss the warmth, but because I think I understand now what the warmth was for. And I want to choose it, the way I should have chosen it the first time, instead of treating it like a default I needed to escape. I looked at her for a long moment. She's done it. She's done the work. She's come back not by walking it back, but by walking through it. This is the kind of woman she could be on her best day, when she's not protecting herself from a fear she couldn't quite name. And the question is whether I'm willing to meet her there. I've been ready for various outcomes. I had been ready for her to ask, and I had been ready to say not yet. I had been ready for her to ask poorly, and I had been ready to ask her to try again. I had not actually been ready for her to ask well. I let the silence hold a few seconds longer than was comfortable. Okay, I said. Okay. Yes. Just like that. I gave her a small smile. The first real smile in 5 weeks, I realized. You asked me clearly. You asked me with thought. You did the work. That's all I needed. I told you when you came to me the first time that I would give you what you asked for. The same is true now. She made a small sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a cry. She put her hand over her mouth. I want you to know, I said, that I'm not going to bring this up again. The 5 weeks, I'm not going to keep it in my pocket as a thing to hand back to you later. Once we've decided to move forward, we've moved forward. I'm not interested in scorekeeping. Thank you. But I do want you to remember one thing. Of course, the next time you come to me with a need, I'm going to take you at your word. Same as I did last time. I'm not going to second guess you. I'm not going to read between the lines. I'm not going to assume you mean something other than what you say. So please, say what you mean. Even when it's hard. Even when you're not sure. Because I will respect it. And the respect will have consequences. And the consequences will be real. She nodded slowly. I understand. I think you do. She got up. She came around the table. She stopped a few feet away from me. Not presuming, not reaching, just standing there. Can I? Yes. She closed the distance. She put her arms around my shoulders from behind, the way she had at the sink 3 weeks ago, and pressed her face between my shoulder blades. I let her stay there. I put my hand over hers where it rested against my chest. We stayed like that for a while. The lemon balm outside the window had filled in nicely since I'd pruned it. The morning light was coming through the glass at a low, warm angle, the kind that only happened for about 20 minutes this time of year, and I noticed it because I've been noticing more things lately. 5 weeks of sleeping alone had sharpened my attention to small details, and I made a private note that I would miss that sharpness, even as I welcomed back what was about to replace it. I'll move my things tonight, I said. Okay. You don't have to help. I want to help. Then help. She laughed. A real laugh. Low and a little surprised at itself. She pressed her cheek against my back one more time, and then she straightened up, and she went to get more coffee. I sat at the table and watched her move around the kitchen. This is the part I thought that I have to be careful about. This is the part where the temptation will be to relax, to assume the work is done, to slip back into the default of closeness as if it were a property of the address and not a thing we do. I won't make that mistake. And if she makes it, I'll notice. And if she notices that I've noticed, she'll correct. And we'll keep doing this, not because we're suspicious of each other, but because we've both learned, finally, that the thing we have is a thing that requires choosing. She set a fresh cup of coffee in front of me. Her hand brushed my shoulder as she did. She did not make a show of the touch. She did not linger. She just chose it. And then she chose the next thing. And then she sat down across from me and said, "What do you want to do today?" And I told her.
Thanks for listening.